This video and our script introduces some of the primary ways that data is imported into R, as well as some of the functions for formatting data once it is in the R system. In each of my scripts, you'll see I make notes. So to make a note in R, you put this hashtag or pound sign or number sign, however you refer to it, and it explains sort of what I'm going to do in the code, and then as we go along it tells different things about that. So here are some packages and things that this code will talk about. So here, when you start with R and you need certain functions, you read in a package. So these are the packages I'm going to use in this R session. So first we need to install them. If you already have them installed, then we just need to read them into the library. So first you would use this part, install packages, and then in quotations the package name. Sometimes you'll have to tell it a little bit more about where to find that package, but generally the things that we're going to use, we'll just use this code. So if you want to do that with my code here, you would remove the commenting sign and run this, and then you could run the library function. The library function, you need to run each session that you run in R, because this library reads the functions into the R session. So run these. Now these will work in my R session. Notice I don't have any comments or anything because I've already installed them, but sometimes some comments will come up in the console. So then the next part we're going to do is read in the different data sets for this example. And we can look here, you can look in the folder where those are. They are available on Canvas. But we have an invoice table, and notice that that is in a CSV format. We have a product table that is in an Excel format, and then finally we have this invoice customer ID table that is in a text format, and in that text format it's tab delimited, so it has tabs to separate the columns. You can open those up and look at them, and you'll see the format that those take. Well, we have functions that can read in these different types of inputs, and these are the different functions. So the read CSV, there is one that comes in the base R settings, but this one comes from this read R package. So we use this function. The only thing that we need to input into that function is the file path and the file. A couple of things to notice here in the file path. So this is where I keep mine. I keep mine on Dropbox and in all these folders. Well, if you were to copy that file path from your Windows system, it will have backslashes rather than forward slashes, so you have to go in and change all of these slashes to forward slashes, and then put in this file name. Once you have that, it'll read easily in, so it's a CSV file. We're using the CSV file and the CSV file function. And then in R, you create an object. So this is the object that I'm creating, and this assigns something to the object. So it sort of is like this. Read in this file, and this looks like an arrow. So that arrow, what goes in, that goes into this object invoice table. Same thing with product table. So now we're going to use the read Excel function. There's a little bit of different syntax here. Here I'm telling it to pull in sheet 1 because Excel can have different sheets. So I'm pulling in just the first sheet. It's the only sheet that has something in this spreadsheet. So again, it will read the Excel file and put it into this object product table. We're going to do the same thing with the tab delimited. This TSV is tab separated values or something. Then it's a text file. It's tab delimited, so I'm going to go ahead and read this into the invoice customer ID. When we run these, notice in our environment window, we get 3 objects. We have each of those objects come from these tables over here, and we can look at those objects, but a few things we notice: these two have 1,000 rows, and this one has 3 columns, this one has 4 columns. This one, the product table, has 75 rows and 2 columns. Well, if we want to look at them, there are a few different ways we can do that. This view, notice it's a capital V. R is case sensitive, so something that is a capital is different from something that is lowercase. So if we want to look at invoice table, we can type in this command, run it, and the table shows up. We can look in here and see the number of products that were ordered, the product that it was, and some other things about this. We can do the same thing with the others, and each one will pop up and we'll see it. So I have these commands here. Another way to do it is just click on this over here, and it does the same thing. And notice what happens is down here in the console, clicking on it just ran the command view the table. We can also click on this arrow, and it will show us a little more information about the table. So this is a column, so this $ indicates a column, so it's the data set, $ column, and it gives a little highlight of the first few values of these rows. Okay, so we've got it all read in. It looks good. We think we have it prepared. Now we need to think carefully about the format that we want to have the columns in. So let's look at invoice table, and summary is a command that just summarizes all of the columns in the table, and summary also functions in a lot of different ways that we'll see going forward. So you can summarize other objects as well, but here provides a summary of these tables. And the output comes here at the bottom. Notice that date says it's a character. Well, in R and in a lot of the software that you might use like this, it needs to recognize date as an actual date rather than as a character. So you can't do any date sort of functions on it if it's a character. So we're going to work with that formatting. Invoice ID, it's a number. Maybe that's what it should be. We're not too concerned about that. Product ID, we're going to look at that in just a minute. And the number that were ordered. Notice we have a negative value here. That's either an error, or maybe in the system there were returns that were treated as a negative value of the number ordered. So we would have to look into that and maybe fix that, either fix the errors so that it was accidentally put as a negative, or we remove them because they were returns rather than sales. So it depends on what we find out about that. Okay, so the date, the character looks like this, 2020/1/1. So this is year, month, day. So if we look in that invoice table again, this is what the date looks like. And so we want to get it into an actual date, but we have to know the format that it's currently in. Another thing we need to look at this product ID. These are all lowercase letters with numbers. If we look at the product table, notice that the product ID here is uppercase with numbers. So if we wanted to merge this, remember in an earlier class you would have looked at what primary keys and how they match together. Well, this A1 that is uppercase will not match, the A1 here with the lowercase a. So we need to fix that so that they're standardized and look the same. Then we have another problem here, that sales price. So let's go ahead and do the summary of the product table. And we see down here, sales price is a character. It needs to be a number, so we can work with the numbers there. So these are dollar values with numbers afterwards. So we need this to be numbers. These programs don't like the actual dollar value to be in a cell, they want that to be a format you choose in how it's output rather than a dollar value there. So we need to fix that. And we have one more problem here. If we look at the other one, date actually is a date, so that's good. But there's a problem that these are all capital letters, and in the invoice table, the date is all lowercase letters. So we can't merge on that either unless those are the same columns, right? They have to be named the same, so we have to fix that as well. So there are some functions that make these changes fairly easy. It's just learning to work with those functions. So let me introduce some of those. Before we go forward, when importing, there are other functions that you can use. So I've listed some of these here. So you can look up these other sorts of formats that you could use to read them in. You can look at readr. It has some other functions that allow you to read things in. And then there are other ones. In baseR, there's some other read ones. So read table and read fixed width format would work for a text version. Read RDS is for R data files, so we'll use that at some point. Read CSV is similar to the other one we already used. There are other packages too, foreign, readr, haven. These ones also work on other formats. If you're coming from a database or if you're coming with a JSON format, so any of these, they have different ways to import. The key is you need to know what type of format you have and then use the right function to get it to read in. Okay, let's fix a couple of things here. So I mentioned earlier that we have the data frame here. It's called a data frame. Then the $ indicates that you're going to tell it what the column is. So data frame is invoice table, $ says column, and column date. So we are going to be working with the date column in the invoice table, and we're going to do these other things to it over here and move it into this object. So in other words, we are creating a new column. So we go over here to invoice table. The current column is lowercase date. We are going to move this all to uppercase date so that they'll be the same column names, and we're going to turn it into a date format. Well, there's a way to do the date format, and that is this function, as.uppercase D date. And then we just have to look up and see what goes in this function. So all the functions have function, then parentheses, and then inputs into that function. Well, if you don't know what to do, and this is going to happen lots of times, especially if you're working on your own sort of program or doing something different than we've done in class, well, here's the way you're going to do this, and you do it all the time, or I do anyways. So if you go here and you say r as dot date, and in Google things will pop up, right? So here you get this as.date. You can go look up things about all of the technical details of that function. Other ones here, how to use as.date function. I like to use these sorts of things, this quick R, date values. So I just go down and find ones that seem to capture the easiest way for me to understand it. So then click on here, and then it's going to tell me this is someone's blog or an R blog that is talking about here's how you use these different date functions. Okay, so I would do that on any sort of thing that you're confused about. You can also get the help in the R system, but I find that people's blogs and explanations tend to be a little bit better than the technical explanations. Okay, so there are other, you can look up other date formats. I give you another nice place to look at here. So here is the way that date formats work. You have to tell it, so this % tells it it's a date format thing. Capital Y is for all 4 digits of the year. You can do lowercase y. So let's look back here at what the format looks like. So up here it says 2020/1/1. uppercase says 4-digit year. 1M lowercase means month, and then same thing for day. So you can go and mess around with these, and notice I have these forward slashes. That's because that's the format that my date is in. So you just change these. If it's not a forward slash, change that. Then you have to look up, like over here, what these formats are to see, do I need an uppercase or a lowercase? What other things do I need to do? And there's a list of those available on several different sites. So let's look at invoice table date. Right now it looks like this, how we can't use it. It's lowercase. So once we run this, we should have a new column here. So we have 4 columns. We run this one. Notice it has created a new column with all uppercase letters, date. And the format here, it says it's a date. That's success. And then in R, this is what the date looks like. This is the format that it is in the native R date format. So now this one's successful. We finished that. Next, let's do the product ID. So remember that this was, well, invoice table, product ID. These are lowercase. We're going to match them to uppercase. That is the same as in the other table. We could do it the other way around. So we could put the other table to be lowercase and that one's to lower. But here this function is to upper, so it moves all letters to uppercase. The input is going to be the data frame invoice table, the column product ID, and we're going to do something to it, and we're going to put that in this column over here. Well, notice it's the same column, so it's just going to change that column. So it's going to do something with the old column, make it the new column, but it'll be the same column. So if we look over at product ID, these are lowercase now. We run this, and now they are uppercase. Okay, now we have this problem of sales price, that it has a dollar value in there, and that will not recognize it as a number, so we need to adjust that. So there are a bunch of functions that work with strings or text. That comes from this stringer package. We're going to do a lot of this stuff later. But what we're going to do here is replace. So string underscore replace. And then we got to figure out what goes into this function. So in this function, we have the column to work with, the pattern that we're trying to replace, and what we're going to replace it with. So in this product table sales price, that's the column that we're working with. Then we want to remove this $sign. So that should work on its own, except for $sign in regular expressions, which we will talk about when we work with text more. $sign is a special character, so it's designated to do something else. So you can't just put a $sign in by itself. So in order to fix that, we have to escape that special status. We put 2 backslashes. Then when R reads this, it will say whatever comes after these 2 backslashes has to be literal. So we're going to actually put in the $sign rather than use it as a special character. So this is a little technical that we will go over more later, but we're trying to just remove this $sign. If it was something else, it was just a letter you wanted to remove, you could just put the letter in here, or a number or something like that. What we're going to replace it with is nothing, so just empty quotation marks. And we can look at that products table. Notice it has this $sign here. So we run this. Now the $sign is removed, but notice it still says it's a character, so we still can't do anything with it that would require numbers. So that's one more thing, we can switch it to numbers. So as long as it already looks like a number, then we can use this function as .numeric, so treat whatever I put in here as a number. So we put in this column, treat it as a number. We're going to replace that same column. Go ahead and run this. Now it says number, and these are all numbers. So we can then do a summary of that, and what we had before is sales price didn't have any information other than that it was a character. So we can run this now, and notice we have a summary of that sales price number because it's treated as a number. And as we're going to explore this data going forward a little bit, so the average sales price of the products are $174. The most expensive product was $389 or $390. The lowest priced product was about $7. Okay, so there are some other resources here that you can go and learn a little bit more about our functions. So here's a really helpful link. So if you go here, it lists a bunch of cheat sheets for how to work with certain packages. So that will include the stringer package, it will include graphing packages, it'll include a bunch of the most commonly used packages. Those cheat sheets are really helpful, especially when it's a function we're going to be working with. That's why I put it here, because in the stringer package, there's a cheat sheet for that, and that's really useful. And then the other part that you'll run into is different date formats that you'll have to work with. Other than that, I think the rest is fairly simple. The nice part about this is once you have these sorts of functions down, then it's really easy to adjust and add and change and put in new tables with different formats. All right, so have a little bit of fun with this, and we'll see how it goes later.